I never thought I'd be one of those mothers struggling on the subway during rush hour, but there I was, surrounded by strangers who couldn't hide their stares and judgment. My arms ached from holding 2 grocery bags while trying to keep Owen from melting down completely. He was 3 and exhausted, his face red and wet with tears as he wailed about wanting to go home. Lily, my 5-year-old, kept tugging at my jacket, asking the same question over and over. "Mommy, why can't we just drive? My feet hurt." I didn't have a good answer for her. How do you explain to a kindergartner that the car her grandfather bought specifically for her safety was sitting in someone else's driveway? How do you tell your children that their own father decided you didn't deserve it? The subway lurched, and I nearly lost my balance. A woman beside me caught one of my grocery bags before it hit the floor, giving me a sympathetic smile that somehow made me feel worse. I mumbled a thank you and tried to soothe Owen by bouncing him slightly, but my arms were shaking from the weight of everything. The bags, my son, the crushing exhaustion that had become my constant companion these past 3 weeks. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. 2 years ago, when my dad gave me that beautiful silver SUV, he'd looked me straight in the eye and said, "This is for you and my grandbabies. I don't want you worrying about breaking down on some highway with those kids in the car." He'd worked so hard to build his construction business from nothing, and when he finally had the money to help me, he did it without hesitation. That car represented more than transportation. It was his way of making sure we were safe. Now it was gone, and I felt like I'd somehow failed him by letting it happen. "Mommy, that man is looking at us," Lily whispered, pressing closer to my leg. I glanced up, ready to give whoever it was a tired smile to acknowledge the disturbance we were causing, and my heart stopped. "Jessica?" It was my dad's voice cutting through the noise of the moving train, the crying, the general chaos of evening commuters trying to get home. I looked up, and there he was, Robert Monroe, still in his work boots and dusty jeans from whatever construction site he'd been overseeing that day. His face showed complete confusion as he took in the scene before him. "Dad?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. He moved through the crowded car with the confidence of someone who'd spent his life navigating difficult situations. When he reached us, his eyes swept over everything, the grocery bags, Owen's tear-stained face, Lily clinging to my leg, the exhaustion I knew was written all over my face. "Why aren't you using the car I gave you?" It wasn't an accusation. He genuinely didn't understand. In his mind, there was a perfectly good vehicle sitting somewhere, ready to prevent exactly this situation. The question was so simple, so logical, that it somehow broke through every defense I'd built up over the past 3 weeks. My eyes filled with tears before I could stop them. "Trevor and his sisters took it," I whispered, not wanting Lily to hear the tremor in my voice. Dad's expression shifted from confusion to something else, something sharp and focused. He bent down and scooped Owen up without asking, and my son immediately stopped crying, resting his head on his grandfather's shoulder. The relief in my arms was instant, but the weight in my chest only grew heavier. "What do you mean? Took it?" Dad's voice was calm, but I knew that tone. It was the same one he used when a contractor tried to cheat him, or when someone on a job site did something dangerous. It was the voice that preceded action. I couldn't explain it here, not surrounded by strangers, not with Lily listening to every word. I just shook my head, and more tears spilled over. "Don't worry," Dad said, and there was something in those 2 words that made me believe him. He shifted Owen to one arm and took both grocery bags with the other like they weighed nothing. "What's your stop?" "Belmont Avenue, but Dad, We're getting off at Belmont then." The next few minutes passed in a blur. Lily held my hand and kept looking up at her grandfather carrying her baby brother, probably wondering why we'd never called him before, if he could make everything feel safer so quickly. When we emerged from the underground station into the evening air, Dad led us to his pickup truck parked nearby. "Were you coming from a job site?" I asked, trying to make normal conversation, trying to pretend this was a pleasant surprise and not a complete disaster. "Meeting with a developer about a new project," he said, opening the back door of his extended cab and securing Owen into the booster seat he kept there for exactly these situations. He'd always been prepared for his grandchildren, always thinking ahead. Lucky thing I took the subway instead of driving. But as he helped Lily into her seat, I saw his jaw was tight. This wasn't luck to him. This was something else entirely. Once the kids were settled, he turned to me. "Get in. We need to talk." I climbed into the passenger seat and the familiar smell of sawdust and coffee surrounded me. How many times had I ridden in this truck growing up? How many times had Dad picked me up from school, from failed dates, from mistakes I'd made? And here I was again, needing him to rescue me, except this time I'd brought 2 innocent kids into my mess. He didn't start the engine. Instead, he turned to face me fully and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, but something colder and more dangerous. "How long has this been going on, Jessica?" 3 weeks, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. It started small. Amber said she needed to impress some clients, and her car wasn't nice enough. Trevor agreed to lend her mine before I could even say anything. Then it was supposed to be just one day, then a weekend. Then Nicole said her car was in the shop and needed it too, and suddenly it's been 3 weeks and you've been hauling my grandchildren on buses and subways with groceries. It wasn't a question. I tried to say no. The words tumbled out now, desperate and ashamed. I told Trevor I needed it, that the kids had doctor appointments and grocery shopping and Lily's ballet classes, but he said I was being selfish. He said family helps family. And then when I really put my foot down last week, when I demanded the keys back, I trailed off, remembering that night in my kitchen. Trevor's face had been so different from the man I'd married, and Amber and Nicole standing behind him like some kind of backup force, their faces smug and satisfied. "When you demanded the keys back, what happened?" Dad's voice was dangerously quiet. "They were all there, Trevor and both his sisters. They cornered me and said if I didn't stop being difficult, I'd see what life was like without his support. Amber called me ungrateful. Nicole said just because you had money didn't mean I was raised with any class." And Trevor just stood there agreeing with them. I was crying fully now, ugly tears that I'd been holding back for weeks. I was scared, Dad. Not physically, but the way they all looked at me, the things they said. I felt so small, so I've just been managing, taking the subway, the bus, whatever I needed to do. I told everyone the car was having problems. I didn't want anyone to know what really happened because it felt like admitting I'd completely failed it. Dad held up his hand and I stopped talking. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number, putting it on speaker. "Tom, it's Rob Monroe. I need you to find out everything you can about Trevor Hayes and his sisters, Amber and Nicole Hayes. Everything. Financial records, legal issues, whatever you can dig up. I'll pay whatever it takes. And I need it fast." He hung up and finally looked at me again. "You didn't fail at anything, sweetheart. But this ends now." Everything had seemed so normal that Sunday afternoon 3 weeks ago. Trevor had insisted we go to his parents' house for dinner, even though I'd mentioned wanting to have a quiet weekend at home with the kids. But he'd been insistent, saying his mum really wanted to see the children. And I'd learned that disagreeing about family visits usually wasn't worth the argument that followed. The Hayes family home was exactly what you'd expect from people who valued appearance above almost everything else. Perfectly landscaped lawn, furniture that looked expensive but wasn't comfortable, and family photos arranged just so on every available surface. Trevor's mother, Patricia, had greeted us at the door with her usual air kisses that didn't actually touch my cheeks, while his father, Donald, barely looked up from his newspaper. Amber had arrived 20 minutes after us, making her entrance like always, complaining loudly about a client who just didn't understand the value of premium real estate. She worked as a real estate agent, though from what I could tell, she spent more time taking selfies in expensive houses than actually selling them. "Oh, Jessica, I love that sweater," she'd said when she saw me, in that tone that somehow made a compliment sound like an insult. So brave of you to wear something so casual to family dinner. I'd been wearing a nice cream cardigan over a dress, but somehow Amber made me feel like I'd shown up in pajamas. Nicole arrived last, as usual. Her dental hygienist scrubs traded for designer jeans and a top that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. She and Amber immediately huddled together, whispering and giggling about something on Nicole's phone, occasionally glancing at me in a way that made my skin crawl. Dinner had been fine. Patricia's pot roast, polite conversation about Trevor's work, the kids being relatively well behaved. I'd started to relax, thinking maybe I'd worried about nothing. Then came dessert. "So," Amber said, setting down her fork and fixing me with that calculated smile she wore when she wanted something. "I have this amazing opportunity coming up. Really high-end clients looking at properties in the $1 million range. They're flying in from California, and first impressions are everything in this business." "That sounds exciting," I'd said, genuinely trying to be supportive. "The thing is," she continued, leaning forward like she was sharing a secret, "my car is just... well, it's fine for every day, but it doesn't exactly scream success, you know? I need something that looks the part." I felt Trevor shift beside me, and somehow I knew where this was going before Amber even finished her sentence. "That SUV of yours would be perfect," she said, her tone light and casual, like she was asking to borrow a cup of sugar. "Just for a few days while I show these clients around. You understand how important image is, right?" Every eye at the table turned to me. Patricia smiled encouragingly. Donald nodded like this was perfectly reasonable. Nicole watched with barely concealed amusement. "Oh, well, I started, but Trevor cut me off. "Of course she can use it," he said, his hand finding mine under the table and squeezing just a little too hard. "Family helps family, right, Jess?" It wasn't really a question. The kids have appointments this week, and I need to do grocery shopping, and Lily has ballet on Thursday. You can take my car," Nicole offered quickly, too quickly. "I'll just Uber to work for a few days. No big deal." Except Nicole's car was a tiny two-door coupe that didn't even have proper back seats, let alone space for 2 car seats and groceries. But everyone was looking at me like I was being difficult, like I was the unreasonable one for hesitating to hand over the vehicle my father had bought specifically for my children's safety. "That's so generous of you, Nicole," Patricia said warmly, then turned to me with expectation written all over her face. "Isn't that generous, Jessica?" I felt trapped, cornered by politeness and family expectations and Trevor's hand still gripping mine under the table. "Sure," I heard myself say. "Of course. Family helps family." Amber's smile turned triumphant. "You're the best, Jess. I'll take great care of it, I promise." That had been 3 weeks ago, and a few days had stretched and stretched like taffy being pulled. First, Amber needed it through the weekend because the clients wanted to see more properties. Then she needed it for another week because she had more showings lined up. Then suddenly Nicole's car actually was in the shop, or so she claimed, and she needed to borrow it too. Every time I asked Trevor when I'd get my car back, he'd get defensive. "Why are you being so selfish about this?" he'd snapped one evening while I was making dinner. "My sister is trying to make a big sale that could really help her career, and you're worried about driving to the grocery store." "It's not just the grocery store," I'd protested quietly, stirring the pasta sauce and not looking at him. "It's the kids' activities, their appointments. Your father bought that car specifically because—" "Your father," he'd corrected sharply. "Your father bought it, yes, and he thinks that means he can control everything, doesn't he? Well, you're part of the Hayes family now, Jessica. That means what's yours is ours." That logic had made my head spin, but I'd learned that arguing with Trevor when he was in that mood only made things worse. So I'd adjusted. I'd figured out bus routes and subway schedules. I'd learned which grocery stores were closest to which stations. I'd carried Owen when he got too tired to walk and held Lily's hand through crowded platforms and pretended everything was fine. Until last Wednesday, when I'd finally broken. Amber had posted photos on social media, her and Nicole in my car at some wine bar downtown with the caption, "Sisters who slay together stay together." Not showing properties, not with clients, just out having fun in the vehicle they'd guilted me into lending them. I'd shown the photos to Trevor that night after the kids were in bed. "I need the car back," I'd said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This was supposed to be for a few days for work, and they're just using it to go out. I need it back, Trevor." His face had darkened immediately. "Are you serious right now? You're going to make a big deal about this?" "It's been 3 weeks. I've been taking 2 small children on public transportation in the heat, carrying groceries, and your sisters are using my car to go drinking downtown. Yes, I'm serious." I hadn't meant to raise my voice, but the frustration had finally boiled over, and that's when everything changed. Trevor had pulled out his phone and made a call. "Hey, Amber. Yeah, can you and Nicole come over? We need to have a family discussion." They'd arrived within 30 minutes, like they'd been waiting for the call. And suddenly I was facing all 3 of them in my own kitchen. Trevor standing with his arms crossed, Amber leaning against the counter with that superior smirk, Nicole examining her nails like this was boring but necessary. "So Jessica has decided to be difficult about the car situation," Trevor announced, like I wasn't even there. "Really?" Amber's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. "After everything we've done for her? What have you done for me?" The question escaped before I could stop it. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Nicole stopped examining her nails and looked at me like I'd just said something obscene. Amber's smirk vanished, replaced by something cold and sharp. Trevor's jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. "What have we done for you?" Amber repeated slowly, pushing off from the counter and taking a step toward me. "Are you actually asking that question right now?" "We welcomed you into this family," Nicole added, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Even though you came from nothing." "I didn't come from nothing," I said quietly, but my voice was shaking. "My dad worked hard for everything he has." "Oh, your dad?" Amber laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yes, let's talk about your dad. New money. Construction worker who got lucky. Just because he has money now doesn't mean you were raised with any class, Jessica. We all see how uncomfortable you are at family events, how you don't know which fork to use, how you—" "That's enough," I interrupted, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. "This isn't about class or forks or whatever superiority you think you have. This is about my car that you've been using for 3 weeks when you said you needed it for a few days." Trevor moved closer, and I instinctively took a step back. I'd never been physically afraid of him before, but something in his eyes that night was different, harder, like he was looking at an obstacle instead of his wife. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice low and controlled. "You're going to stop making problems. You're going to stop being selfish and ungrateful. Because if you don't, you're going to see what life looks like without my support." "What does that mean?" I whispered. "It means," Nicole chimed in, examining her nails again like this conversation was beneath her, "that you might want to think about who pays the mortgage on this house, who has the career with benefits, who has the family connections that matter." My mind raced. Yes, Trevor's name was on the mortgage, but I'd put down half the down payment from my savings. Yes, he had benefits through his job, but I worked too. I was a teacher. And that mattered. And family connections. What did that even mean? "Are you threatening me?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "Nobody's threatening anyone," Amber said smoothly, but her smile was all teeth. "We're just helping you understand reality. You're part of this family now, which means what's yours is ours. That car? It might have been a gift from your daddy, but you're a Hayes now. Hayes family shares everything." "That's not how gifts work," I said weakly. "It's how family works," Trevor shot back. "Unless you don't want to be part of this family anymore. Is that what you're saying, Jessica? Because I can make that happen." The threat hung in the air like smoke. I looked at each of them, my husband and his sisters forming a united front against me in my own kitchen. And something inside me cracked. Not broke. Not yet. but cracked. A hairline fracture that would only get worse with pressure. I'd handed over the keys without another word. That had been a week ago, and I'd been drowning ever since. The shame of it was almost worse than the inconvenience. I'd stopped answering my dad's calls because I knew he'd hear something wrong in my voice. I'd made excuses to my friends about why I couldn't meet up, why I was always rushing, why I looked so tired. I told everyone the car was having mechanical problems, that it was in the shop, that I was managing fine. But I wasn't fine. I was breaking apart piece by piece, and the worst part was that I'd let it happen. I'd handed over those keys because I was scared, not of physical violence, but of something harder to define. The threat of being cut off, isolated, labelled as the problem when I was just trying to protect what was mine. Now, sitting in my father's truck with Owen and Lily buckled safely in the back, watching Dad's face as he processed everything I'd told him, I felt that crack inside me widen just a little more. "Don't go home tonight," Dad said after a long moment of silence. His voice was calm, but I could see his hands gripping the steering wheel tight enough to make his knuckles white. "Pack bags for you and the kids. Stay at my house." "Dad, I can't just—" "Yes, you can." He turned to look at me and his eyes were fierce. "Jessica, listen to me very carefully. What you just described isn't a family disagreement. That's intimidation. That's financial abuse. And I'm not going to let it continue for one more day. But Trevor will what? Come to my house and demand you come back? I'd love to see him try." Dad started the engine. "I'm taking you home right now. You're going to pack whatever you and the kids need for a few days. I'll wait outside. Then you're coming to my place while I figure out exactly what we're dealing with." "What do you mean, figure out what we're dealing with?" He glanced at me, and there was something in his expression I'd rarely seen. The same look he got when someone tried to cheat him on a contract or when a safety violation put his workers at risk. It was the look of a man who'd built something from nothing and wasn't about to let anyone take advantage of his family. That phone call I made, that was to Tom Riley. He's a private investigator I've used for business dealings. Good at finding information people don't want found. Dad pulled into traffic, heading toward my neighborhood. If Trevor and his sisters felt comfortable cornering you in your own home and threatening you over a car, this isn't about the car, Jessica. There's something else going on. Money problems, maybe. Something that made them desperate enough to bully you. You think Trevor's in financial trouble? I think a man who has to threaten his wife and recruit his sisters to back him up is a man who's hiding something. Dad's voice was grim, and I'm going to find out what it is. We drove in silence for a few minutes. In the back seat, Lily was singing softly to Owen, some song from her kindergarten class. They had no idea what was happening, no idea their world was about to shift. Part of me wanted to tell Dad to forget it, to just take me home so I could pretend everything was normal. But another part, the part that was tired of being small and scared and constantly apologizing for taking up space, knew he was right. "What if I'm overreacting?" I asked quietly. "What if this is just normal family stuff and I'm being too sensitive like Trevor always says?" Dad reached over and took my hand. "Sweetheart, normal families don't threaten each other. Normal husbands don't corner their wives with backup. And normal people don't make you feel crazy for wanting to keep what's yours." He squeezed my hand gently. "Trust me on this. Something's very wrong, and we're going to find out what it is." As we pulled up to my house, I saw Trevor's car in the driveway, my stomach clenched with anxiety. But then I felt Dad's steady presence beside me and remembered. I wasn't alone anymore. I'd been seen. Finally, someone had seen what was happening and believed me without question. 10 minutes, Dad said. "Pack fast, I'll be right here." I nodded and got out of the truck, my heart pounding as I headed toward the front door. I'd barely gotten through the door with the kids when Trevor appeared from the living room, his face already twisted with suspicion. "Where have you been? I've been calling you for an hour." His eyes swept over me, then landed on the children. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" "We ran into my dad on the subway," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "He gave us a ride home. Trevor's expression shifted from suspicion to something darker. Your dad just happened to be on the subway? Yes, Trevor. People take the subway, even people who own construction companies. I moved past him toward the stairs, holding Lily's hand while Owen toddled beside me. I need to get the kids cleaned up for bed. It's only 7:30. They're tired. We had a long day. I kept walking, feeling his eyes boring into my back. We need to talk, he called after me. After I get them settled. I heard him mutter something under his breath, but I didn't stop. In the kids' room, I pulled out their small suitcases from the closet, the ones we used for weekend trips to visit my dad. My hands shook as I started throwing in clothes, trying to remember what they'd need. Pajamas, clothes for a few days, their favourite stuffed animals, toothbrushes. Mommy, are we going to Grandpa's house? Lily asked, her eyes bright with excitement. Yes, baby. Just for a little visit. Can we see his truck? The big one with the crane? Maybe. We'll see. I kissed the top of her head and kept packing, my heart racing. I could hear Trevor moving around downstairs, his footsteps heavier than usual. Angry footsteps. Once the kids' bags were packed, I went to my bedroom and grabbed my own suitcase. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents. I grabbed my passport, birth certificates for the kids, our social security cards. Something told me to take anything I might need if I couldn't come back easily. That's when I saw it. Trevor's jacket was thrown over the chair by his dresser, and a piece of paper was sticking out of the pocket. I don't know what made me look. Maybe intuition. Maybe just the way it caught the light, but I pulled it out and felt my blood turn to ice. It was a bill of sale, a draft printed from someone's computer with blank spaces for signatures. But the vehicle information was already filled in, my SUV's make, model, year, and VIN number. The selling price, $18,000. My father had paid $32,000 for that car 2 years ago. I stood there staring at the paper and suddenly everything clicked into place. This wasn't about Amber needing to impress clients. This wasn't about Nicole's car being in the shop. This was about Trevor planning to sell my car, the car that wasn't even in his name, without telling me. Jessica, Trevor's voice came from downstairs, sharp and impatient. Are you coming down or what? I folded the paper and shoved it in my pocket, then grabbed my suitcase and headed downstairs. Trevor was standing by the front door, blocking it. His arms crossed over his chest. Where do you think you're going with those bags? The kids and I are staying at my dad's for a few days. Like hell you are. He moved closer and I instinctively stepped back. You're not taking my children anywhere. They're my children too, Trevor, and we're just visiting my dad. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal when you're acting crazy and irrational. His voice rose. First you make a scene about the car. Now you're running to Daddy like a child. When are you going to grow up, Jessica? I felt the paper in my pocket like it was burning. I found the bill of sale. The colour drained from his face just for a second before the anger rushed back in. You went through my things? It was sticking out of your pocket. You were planning to sell my car. My car, Trevor. The one my father bought for me and the kids. The one that's in my name. Not yours. We're married. What's yours is mine. You said so yourself. Family shares everything. He was using Amber's words, her logic, and it made me feel sick. That's not how it works. That car is titled solely in my name. Selling it without my permission is theft. Trevor laughed, but it was harsh and bitter. You're going to call me a thief? After everything I've done for you? After I gave you this house, this life? I helped pay for this house. I work too, Trevor. I contribute. You're a teacher. You make what, $35,000 a year? That's barely enough to cover groceries, he sneered, and I saw his sisters in that expression. Without me, you'd be living in some apartment somewhere, struggling to make rent. Behind me, I heard Lily start to cry softly. She'd come to the top of the stairs and was watching us fight. Owen was beside her, his thumb in his mouth, his eyes wide and scared. Stop it, I said quietly, gesturing to the kids. Just stop. I'll stop when you put those bags away and start acting like a wife instead of a spoiled brat who runs to Daddy every time things don't go her way. There was a knock at the door. hard, authoritative. Trevor and I both froze. "That's my dad," I said. "He's waiting for us. Tell him to leave." "No." The knock came again, louder this time. Trevor's face went red. "If you walk out that door with those kids, don't bother coming back, you hear me? You want to choose your daddy over your husband, fine. But don't expect me to be here when you decide to come crawling back." I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered when he'd become this person. Or had he always been this way, and I'd just been too desperate to be loved to notice? "I'm not choosing between anyone," I said quietly. "I'm choosing to not be threatened in my own home. I'm choosing to not have my things stolen. I'm choosing to protect my children from watching their father bully their mother." I walked past him to the stairs and scooped up Owen, taking Lily's hand. Trevor didn't try to stop me physically, but his voice followed us as I grabbed our bags. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Jessica. The biggest mistake." I opened the door and there was my dad, his expression calm but his eyes sharp and assessing. He took Owen from my arms and picked up the bags without a word. "Hi, Grandpa," Lily said, her voice still shaky from crying. "Hi, sweetheart. Ready for a sleepover at my house?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. I didn't look back at Trevor as we walked to the truck. I couldn't. If I looked back, I might lose my nerve. I might remember all the good times, all the reasons I'd fallen in love with him, all the promises he'd made about the life we'd build together. But those promises had been built on sand, and now the tide was coming in. Dad secured the kids in their car seats, then turned to me. "You okay?" I pulled out the bill of sale and handed it to him. He read it quickly, his jaw tightening with each line. He was going to sell it, I whispered, for $18,000. Half what you paid for it. Dad folded the paper carefully and put it in his pocket. "Get in the truck, sweetheart." "What are you going to do?" He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that was both comforting and terrifying, the absolute certainty of a man who'd made a decision and wouldn't be swayed. "I'm going to end this, tomorrow morning. But tonight you and the kids are safe. That's all that matters right now." As we drove away, I watched my house disappear in the side mirror and wondered if I'd ever feel safe there again. I barely slept that night. Dad had set us up in the guest room, the one he'd decorated years ago hoping we'd visit more often, with a double bed for me and a trundle that pulled out for the kids. Lily and Owen had fallen asleep quickly, exhausted from the emotional day. But I'd laid awake staring at the ceiling and wondering what tomorrow would bring. Around 6 in the morning, I heard Dad moving around downstairs. The smell of coffee drifted up, and I finally gave up on sleep and went to find him. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop, several printed documents spread out in front of him, his phone beside his coffee mug. He looked up when I entered and gestured to the coffee pot. "Tom worked fast," he said without preamble. "You're going to want to sit down for this." I poured myself a cup and sat across from him, my stomach churning with anxiety. Dad slid a document across the table. "Trevor's been gambling, online poker, sports betting. He's lost over $80,000 in the past 18 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. 80,000! How is that even possible? Credit cards, a loan he took out without telling you, and... Dad paused, his expression grim. "He's been draining your joint savings account, little by little so you wouldn't notice." I thought about all the times Trevor had insisted on handling the finances, saying I had enough to worry about with work and the kids. How he'd gotten annoyed when I asked to see bank statements. How he always changed the subject when I mentioned saving for the kids' college funds. There's more. Dad pulled out another document, printouts of text messages. "Tom has a contact at Amber's real estate agency. She's been involved in some questionable dealings, inflating appraisal values, hiding property defects from buyers. Her broker's been investigating her, and she could lose her license. And Nicole? Fired from her last dental office for insurance fraud. She was billing for procedures that were never performed. The office didn't press charges because she agreed to leave quietly. But it's documented." I stared at the evidence spread across the table, the financial records, the text messages, the background reports. My husband and his sisters weren't just bullies. They were desperate, cornered people making increasingly bad decisions. They needed that car, I said slowly, understanding dawning. Trevor needs money to pay off his debts, and they figured selling it was easier than explaining where all our savings went. That's exactly what Tom thinks. And here's the thing, Jessica. That car is titled solely in your name. If Trevor sold it without your permission, that's not a civil matter, that's criminal. Auto theft. Dad's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and stood up. That's my lawyer. She's downstairs. We're going to your house this morning and we're settling this. Dad, I don't know if... I do know. He came around the table and crouched beside my chair, taking my hands. Sweetheart, I let you marry him because you were an adult, and it was your choice. I didn't say anything when I noticed him being controlling because I thought maybe I was being overprotective. But I won't stand by and watch you be threatened and stolen from. Not anymore. Tears burned my eyes. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're kind, and you wanted to believe the best in people. That's not a character flaw, Jessica. That's who you are, and it's beautiful. But kindness doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. 2 hours later, I was standing on my own front porch with my father, his lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, and a police officer named Martinez, who Dad apparently went to high school with. This is just a civil standby, Officer Martinez explained to me quietly. I'm here to make sure nothing gets out of hand while you collect your belongings and have this conversation. I can't get involved in the domestic dispute itself unless someone breaks the law. Dad knocked. Loud, authoritative. After a moment, Trevor opened the door. His eyes widened when he saw the group assembled on his porch, then narrowed with anger when they landed on me. What is this? He demanded. This is a conversation, Dad said calmly. Are we doing it out here? Or can we come inside? Trevor looked like he wanted to slam the door, but the presence of a police officer seemed to change his mind. He stepped back, and we entered. I could hear voices from the kitchen. Amber and Nicole were already here. Of course they were. The sisters appeared in the doorway, their faces shifting from confusion to alarm when they saw our group. What's going on? Amber demanded, but her voice had lost some of its usual confidence. Dad set his briefcase on the coffee table and opened it, pulling out the documents Tom had compiled. He laid them out one by one, like cards in a poker game. Trevor Hayes, $83,000 in gambling debts. Online poker, sports betting, casino visits charged to credit cards. He looked at Trevor, whose face had gone pale. Want to tell Jessica about that? Or should I continue? This is a private matter, Trevor said, but his voice shook. It stopped being private when you tried to steal and sell your wife's car to cover your debts. Dad pulled out the bill of sale I'd found. This vehicle is titled solely in Jessica's name. Selling it without her permission isn't a family disagreement. It's auto theft. A felony. Patricia Chen stepped forward, pulling out her own documents. Mr. Hayes, I'm Patricia Chen, representing Mrs. Hayes. We're prepared to file for legal separation immediately. We also have grounds for fraud charges given your systematic depletion of joint marital assets without disclosure. You can't prove that, Trevor said, but he was sweating now. Actually, we can. Dad pulled out bank statements highlighted in yellow. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every credit card payment to online gambling sites, it's all here. Amber found her voice. This is harassment. You can't just barge in here with threats and... Ms. Hayes, Patricia Chen turned to her with a cold smile. Perhaps you'd like to discuss the complaints filed against you with the Real Estate Commission. Or we could talk about inflated appraisals on the Morrison property, the lakeside condo deal. Amber's face went white. And Nicole Hayes, Patricia continued, should we discuss why you left your previous employment at Bright Smile Dental? The insurance fraud investigation they chose not to pursue in exchange for your quiet resignation. Nicole looked like she might be sick. The room fell silent. I watched Trevor's face cycle through emotions. Anger, fear, desperation. Finally, he looked at me. Jess, come on. We can work this out. You don't need to do this. Where are my car keys? I asked quietly. Baby, let's just talk about this. Family counselling or something. We can fix this. The keys, Trevor. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second he realised I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Not ever again. He pulled the keys from his pocket and threw them on the coffee table. They landed with a metallic clatter that sounded like the ending of something. Dad picked them up and handed them to me. The weight of them in my palm felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost. Here's what's going to happen, Patricia Chen said, her voice crisp and professional. Mrs. Hayes is filing for legal separation today. Given the financial deception and the attempted theft, we're asking for full custody of the minor children, child support, and division of actual marital assets, meaning assets that existed before Mr. Hayes gambled them away. If you contest any of this, Dad added, his voice quiet but steel underneath, we file criminal charges for attempted auto theft. We also make sure the relevant professional boards know about Amber's real estate violations and Nicole's insurance fraud. Your choice. Trevor looked at his sisters. Amber was staring at the floor, all her swagger gone. Nicole's hands were shaking. You can't do this, Trevor said, but there was no strength behind it anymore. Those are my kids. Those are children who watched their father threaten their mother, I said, and my voice didn't shake. Children who saw their mother struggling on the subway with groceries because you and your sisters decided my car was yours to take. Children who deserve better than learning that bullying and stealing are okay if you call it family. Trevor's shoulders slumped. The fight went out of him all at once, and I realised he'd only ever been strong when he had backup, when he could corner someone weaker. Faced with actual consequences, he had nothing. Mr. Hayes? Patricia Chen prompted. Do we have an agreement, or do we proceed with criminal charges? Fine, he said finally, the word barely a whisper. Fine. Just make it go away. The debt? Dad's laugh was harsh. That's your problem, son, but you'll leave Jessica and my grandchildren alone while you figure it out. Officer Martinez, who'd been standing silently by the door, finally spoke. Mr. Hayes, I'm going to strongly suggest you cooperate with these proceedings. Speaking as someone who's seen domestic situations escalate, you don't want this to get worse. Trevor just nodded, defeated. We left 20 minutes later, after I'd quickly gathered more clothes and important items. As I walked out carrying a box of the kids' toys, I passed Trevor sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. Part of me, the part that had loved him, that had believed in our future together, felt sad. But a bigger part felt free. Dad loaded everything into my SUV, with my keys that I'd reclaimed. What happens now? I asked. Now? We get your life back on track, he smiled. But first, let's go pick up those grandkids of mine. I promised Lily she could see the crane truck. I hugged him tight, right there in the driveway, and whispered, Thank you. Always, sweetheart, he said. Always. 3 months later, I was buckling Owen into his car seat, in my car, the one I drove every day now, when Lily asked, Mommy, are we having dinner at Grandpa's again? We are, I confirmed, kissing her forehead. Is that okay? It's the best, she said seriously. Grandpa makes the best spaghetti. I laughed and climbed into the driver's seat. The divorce had been finalised last week. Trevor's parents, horrified by what their son had done and embarrassed by their daughter's involvement, had quietly settled everything in my favour to avoid criminal charges and public scandal. I had the car, full custody, child support from Trevor's actual income, and half of what remained of our marital assets. More importantly, I had my dignity back. I'd started therapy. I'd reconnected with friends I'd drifted away from. I'd stopped apologising for taking up space or having needs. And every week, we had dinner at Dad's house, because family wasn't about obligation or control. It was about showing up for each other. As I drove through the city toward Dad's house, the evening sun painting everything gold, Lily started singing in the back seat. Owen joined in with his toddler babble. And I realized something. That awful day on the subway, when Dad had found us at our lowest point, hadn't been the worst moment of my life. It had been the beginning of getting my life back. I pulled up to Dad's house and he was already on the porch, waving. Lily unbuckled herself and ran to him, chattering about her day at school. Owen toddled after her, arms outstretched for his grandfather. Dad caught my eye over the kids' heads and smiled. I smiled back, feeling genuinely happy for the first time in years. Sometimes you need someone to see you at your worst to find the strength to become your best. And sometimes the person who gave you your first ride in life is the same person who helps you reclaim the driver's seat when you've lost your way. I was driving my own life now, and I was never giving anyone else the keys again. I still remember the exact moment my world flipped upside down. I was sitting at my desk finishing up a client presentation when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Derek, my husband. I smiled before I even opened it, thinking maybe he was confirming what time I should arrive at his mother's party. The words on the screen didn't make sense at first. I read them once, then twice, then 3 times. You don't need to come. My mother doesn't want you here. My hands started shaking. I set my phone down on the desk like it had burned me. For a full minute, I just stared at it, waiting for another message to pop up. Something like, "Just kidding," or "Sorry, that was meant for someone else." But nothing came. The message just sat there, cold and final. This wasn't just any party. This was the housewarming celebration for the mansion I had bought for Patricia and Joel. The mansion that cost me $847,000. The mansion I had worked myself nearly to exhaustion to afford. Let me back up a little bit, because you need to understand how we got here. 2 months ago, Derek came home from visiting his parents looking worried. He sat down at our kitchen table and told me his mom and dad were struggling. Their old house needed repairs they couldn't afford, and they were behind on their mortgage payments. He looked so sad, so concerned for them. And me? I wanted to help. I always wanted to help. I had been married to Derek for 7 years, and in those 7 years, I had been trying to win Patricia's approval. She never liked me much. I could see it in the way her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. I could hear it in the tone she used when she talked to me, like she was explaining something to a not very bright child. But I kept trying. I kept hoping that one day she would see me as a real daughter, not just the woman who married her son. So when Derek told me about his parents' money problems, I saw an opportunity. Not just to help them, but to finally prove myself. I decided I would buy them a house, a beautiful house, a dream house, and I would surprise them with it at their 40th wedding anniversary party. For 2 months, I worked like crazy. I took on extra consulting projects. I worked late into the night and all through the weekends. Derek thought I was just busy with regular work stuff. He had no idea I was saving every extra dollar, building up enough money for a down payment on a house that would make his parents comfortable for the rest of their lives. I looked at dozens of properties. I wanted it to be perfect. Finally, I found it. A gorgeous 5-bedroom mansion in a quiet neighborhood with a big backyard and a 2-car garage. It had everything. High ceilings, modern kitchen, beautiful hardwood floors. I imagined Patricia cooking in that kitchen, Joel working in the garden. I imagined Sunday dinners there with the whole family, everyone happy and together. The down payment alone was $300,000. I had to take money from my savings, from my business account, from investments I had been building for years. But I didn't care. This was going to change everything. I remember the day I presented them with the house deed. It was at a small family dinner 3 weeks ago. Just Derek, his parents, and his sister Vanessa. I had the deed in a fancy envelope with a big bow on it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Patricia opened the envelope slowly. She read the paper inside. Her face was blank for a moment, then she looked up at me. I was waiting for tears of joy, for a huge hug, for her to finally tell me I was like a real daughter to her. Instead, she gave me this tight little smile and said, "Well, this is quite generous." That was it. No hug, no tears, just quite generous, like I had brought a pie to dinner or something. Vanessa immediately asked if I would help her buy a condo too. Just like that. No congratulations to her parents, no thank you to me. Just, what about me? Joel, Derek's dad, was the only one who seemed really happy. He had tears in his eyes and gave me a big hug and thanked me over and over. That made me feel a little better, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Patricia's reaction. Derek was quiet. He kissed my cheek and said it was very nice of me, but he seemed uncomfortable. I told myself he was just overwhelmed by such a big gesture. I told myself everything was fine. Over the next 3 weeks, Patricia and Joel moved into the mansion. Patricia called me a few times to tell me about problems with the house. The water pressure wasn't quite right. She didn't like the colour of one of the bedrooms. The backyard needed more work. Every call felt like a complaint, never a thank you. But I pushed those feelings down. I told myself she was just stressed from moving. Then Patricia announced she was having a big housewarming party. She invited all her friends, all the neighbours, extended family members I had never even met. Derek showed me the invitation list. Over 30 people. I started planning what I would wear, thinking about what dish I should bring. I even bought a new dress for the occasion. And then, sitting at my desk on what should have been a normal Thursday afternoon, I got that text. "You don't need to come. My mother doesn't want you here," I typed back with trembling fingers. Understood. That was all I could manage. One word, because if I wrote more, I might have written things I couldn't take back. Or worse, I might have begged. I might have asked why, or what did I do wrong? And I was tired of begging for scraps of kindness from these people. After I sent that message, I just sat there. My presentation was still open on my computer screen. My coffee was getting cold next to me. Outside my window, it was a beautiful, sunny day. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. Something clicked inside me in that moment. It was like a fog I had been living in for 7 years suddenly cleared. I started thinking about everything, really thinking about it for the first time. I thought about every family vacation I had paid for. Every time Vanessa asked to borrow money that was never paid back. Every expensive gift Patricia accepted with barely a thank you. Every time Derek made excuses for his mother's coldness toward me. Every time I was left out of family photos or forgotten at family gatherings. I thought about the $15,000 Vanessa borrowed last year for a business investment that never happened. I thought about the time Patricia told me at Christmas that I worked like a man. And that's why Derek and I didn't have children yet. I thought about how Derek never stood up for me. Not once. Not ever. And I thought about that mansion. That beautiful, expensive mansion that I had nearly destroyed my health to buy for them. The mansion where Patricia was right now at this very moment, throwing a party that I wasn't allowed to attend. I looked at the clock. It was 2:47 in the afternoon. The party started at 6:00. I had just over 3 hours. I picked up my phone and made the first call. Then the second, then the third. With each call, my hands got steadier. My voice got calmer. By the fourth call, I wasn't shaking anymore. When I finished making my arrangements, I grabbed my purse and my car keys. I had one more stop to make before I showed up at that party. Because I was going to that party after all. And I was bringing some very important papers with me. The leather steering wheel was cool under my hands as I drove across town. My heart was beating fast, but not from panic, from clarity. For the first time in 7 years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. In the passenger seat next to me was a folder. A simple manila folder that held the power to change everything. But before I explain what was in that folder, I need to tell you how I ended up here, in this car, on this day, finally ready to stand up for myself. I met Derek 8 years ago at a coffee shop. I had just started my own consulting business, helping small companies with their technology systems. I was working 18-hour days, living on coffee and hope, trying to build something from nothing. Derek worked at a bank as a manager. He seemed stable, kind, and supportive. When he asked me out, I said yes. Those first months were wonderful. He was interested in my business, asking questions about my work, celebrating my small victories. When I landed my first big client, he took me out to dinner. When I was stressed about a project, he rubbed my shoulders and told me I could do anything I set my mind to. I thought I had found a partner, a real teammate. We got married after dating for a year. Looking back now, I realize that's when things started to change, small things at first. Derek would make little comments about how much I worked. His mother Patricia started showing up at our apartment unannounced, always with some problem that needed fixing, always looking around at our stuff with this expression I couldn't quite read. Then my business started to really take off. Within 2 years of our marriage, I was making 3 times what Derek made at the bank. I never made a big deal about it. I never threw it in his face. Money was just money to me, something that helped us live comfortably, nothing more. But it became something different to Derek and his family. Patricia started treating every family gathering like a business meeting. She would mention things they needed, a new refrigerator, car repairs, help with property taxes. Never directly asking, but always mentioning, and Derek would look at me with these sad eyes until I offered to help, which I always did. Vanessa was even worse. She would call me her favourite sister-in-law when she needed something, which was funny because I was Derek's only wife. She borrowed money for everything, rent, car payments, that business investment that never happened. She promised to pay me back every single time. She never did. Not once. And when I gently reminded her about the money, she would act offended, like I was being petty for even mentioning it. The worst part was how they all treated me while taking my money. Patricia still gave me that cold smile. She still made little comments about my work, my clothes, my choice to focus on my career. She forgot to invite me to family events, then acted surprised when I showed up because Derek told me about them. She criticized everything about me while happily accepting every dollar I gave. And Derek? He always made excuses. She's just old-fashioned. That's just how she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. Never once did he stand up for me. Never once did he tell his mother to treat his wife with respect. He just stood there, quiet and uncomfortable, while his family picked me apart and picked my wallet clean. But I kept trying. I kept believing that if I was just generous enough, kind enough, patient enough, they would finally accept me. Finally love me. Finally see me as family. That's why I bought the house. That massive, expensive, beautiful house. It was going to be my final proof that I was worthy of being a part of this family. Except there was something about that house that nobody knew. Something I hadn't told anyone, not even Derek. I was going to explain it all at the party, but now my plans had changed. When I bought the house, I didn't actually buy it outright. The full price was $847,000. I put down $300,000, every bit of savings I had. But for the remaining $547,000, I had to take out a mortgage. And here's the thing about mortgages. Someone has to qualify for them. Patricia and Joel couldn't qualify on their own. Their credit scores were terrible. They had debt, late payments, and barely any income since they were both retired. The bank wouldn't give them a loan for a house that expensive. So I did what I thought was a generous thing. I co-signed on the mortgage. I became a co-borrower, legally responsible for the loan alongside Patricia and Joel. I thought I was helping. I thought I was making it possible for them to have this beautiful home. I signed all the papers at the closing, thick stacks of documents that I reviewed carefully, including one particular document, a co-borrower agreement that gave me certain rights if I ever decided to withdraw from the mortgage obligation. At the time, I never imagined I would need those rights. At the time, I was picturing happy family dinners in that house for years to come. I was imagining Patricia finally hugging me and calling me daughter. I was imagining being part of something bigger than myself, but that was before the text message. In the 2 hours after Derek told me I wasn't welcome at the party, I made several phone calls. First, I called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Linda who I had worked with on business contracts. I explained the situation and asked her about my options with the co-borrower agreement. She told me exactly what I needed to know, and she agreed to start preparing paperwork immediately. Then I called the mortgage company and informed them I wanted to withdraw as a co-borrower. They told me the process and what documents I would need. I requested copies of everything, every paper I had signed, every clause in every agreement. Next, I called my bank and spoke with my financial advisor. I wanted to understand all my assets, everything that was in my name versus what was in both our names. Turned out, most everything important was mine alone. The house Derek and I lived in. I bought it before we got married, so it was only in my name. My business. I built it, so it was mine. My car, my retirement accounts, most of our savings, all mine, or mostly mine. Finally, I called my brother Thomas. He's a family law attorney in another state, and even though he couldn't represent me directly, he could give me advice. I told him everything, the years of disrespect, the money given and never appreciated, the text message that finally broke me. He listened quietly, and when I finished, he said something I'll never forget. "Amber," he said, "you're not breaking this family apart. You're just finally seeing that you were never really part of it in the first place." Those words hit me hard, but they were true. I had been trying to buy my way into a family that never wanted me there, and now they had made it clear. In the house I paid for, at the party I funded, I was not wanted. Now I was pulling up to the mansion. The driveway was full of cars. Through the big windows I paid for, I could see people laughing and celebrating. I picked up my phone and sent a group text to Derek, Patricia, Joel, and Vanessa. "I'm outside. I have documents that need immediate signatures regarding the house. Legal matter, 5 minutes." I grabbed my folder and stepped out of the car. Time to crash my own party. The front door swung open before I could knock. Vanessa stood there in a tight red dress, holding a glass of wine, looking at me like I was a door-to-door salesperson who had interrupted her favorite television show. "What are you doing here?" she said, not even trying to hide the annoyance in her voice. "Derek said you weren't coming." I smiled politely, the same polite smile I had been giving this family for 7 years. "I need everyone to sign some paperwork. It's about the house." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Seriously? Right now?" "We're in the middle of a party." "It's a legal requirement," I said calmly. "It won't take long." Before Vanessa could respond, Patricia appeared behind her. She was wearing a cream-coloured pantsuit that probably cost more money than she had any right to spend. Her face was flushed, probably from wine and the excitement of showing off her new house to all her friends. When she saw me, her expression turned cold. "This is inappropriate, Amber," she said sharply. "We're having a private family celebration." Those words stung more than she probably intended. Private family celebration. As if I wasn't family. As if I hadn't paid for every square inch of this house they were celebrating in. I kept my voice steady. "This will only take a moment. It's a legal requirement. Unless you'd prefer I have my attorney schedule a formal meeting." The word attorney worked like magic. Patricia's face changed immediately. The anger was replaced by something else. Worry, maybe, or fear. She stepped aside without another word. I walked into the house. My house, technically. The one I had chosen, the one I had paid for, the one I had imagined hosting family gatherings in. Except I was never supposed to be part of those gatherings, apparently. The living room was full of people I didn't know. Patricia's friends from her book club, neighbours from the new neighbourhood, some distant relatives I had maybe met once or twice. They all looked happy, drinking wine and eating appetizers from the fancy serving platters Patricia must have bought recently. More money she didn't have. Derek appeared from the kitchen, carrying a tray of something. When he saw me, his face went completely white. The tray wobbled in his hands, and for a second I thought he might drop it. "Amber," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "What are you—" I cut him off gently. "Just some paperwork, honey. Nothing to worry about." But his eyes told me he knew there was plenty to worry about. I looked at Patricia. "I need to speak with you, Joel, Derek, and Vanessa privately. Is there somewhere we can talk?" Patricia hesitated, then nodded toward a room off the main hallway. "The study." "Of course. The study with the beautiful oak desk and the built-in bookshelves." I remembered picking out that desk from the furniture store, imagining Joel sitting there doing crossword puzzles or Patricia writing letters. Such stupid, hopeful imaginings. The five of us filed into the study and I closed the door behind us. Joel was the last to enter, looking confused and worried. He was the only one who had genuinely thanked me for the house, the only one who had seemed truly grateful. I almost felt bad about what I was about to do. Almost. I opened my folder and spread several documents across the beautiful desk, the desk my money paid for. "So," I began, keeping my voice calm and professional, "I wanted to review the details of the house purchase with everyone present." Patricia crossed her arms. "We already know the details, Amber. You bought us a house. Very generous. We've thanked you." "Actually," I said, "that's not quite accurate. I didn't buy the house outright." The room went very quiet. Even the sounds of the party outside seemed to fade away. "What do you mean?" Derek asked slowly. I pulled out the mortgage documents. The house cost $847,000. I put down $300,000, but the remaining $547,000 is a mortgage. A mortgage that I co-signed on. Patricia's face went from flushed to pale in about 2 seconds. "What? You said this was a gift." "I said I was giving you a home," I corrected her. "I never said I was paying for it entirely. The mortgage is in both your names and mine. I'm legally responsible for it. In fact, I've been making the mortgage payments for the past 6 months since closing." Vanessa exploded. "Why would you do that? That's not a gift. That's manipulation." I felt a flash of anger but kept it contained. "Manipulation? I co-signed because your parents couldn't qualify for a mortgage on their own. Their credit scores are too low and they don't have enough income. The bank wouldn't give them a loan for a house this nice. I used my credit, my income, my financial standing to make this possible for them." Joel finally spoke, his voice quiet. "I remember signing those papers. There were so many of them." "Yes," I said, "and one of those papers was a co-borrower agreement." I pulled it out and pointed to a specific section. "This agreement states that if I, as the co-borrower providing the financial backing, choose to withdraw from the mortgage, I have the right to either transfer my obligation to another qualified party or initiate a sale of the property to settle the debt." The silence in the room was so thick I could almost touch it. "I'm here to inform you that I'm withdrawing as a co-borrower," I announced, "effective immediately." "You can't do that," Vanessa shrieked. "I can, and I am," I said calmly. "You have 3 options. Option 1, find someone else to co-sign and refinance the entire mortgage within 30 days. Option 2, buy me out of my equity stake. That would be my $300,000 down payment plus the 6 months of mortgage payments I've made, about $18,000, so $318,000 total. Option 3, we sell the house and split whatever equity exists after paying off the mortgage and closing costs." The room erupted. Patricia started yelling about betrayal and how could I do this to them. Vanessa was calling me names I won't repeat. Derek was just staring at me like I had grown a second head. Joel sat down heavily in the desk chair, looking at the papers spread in front of him with shock and confusion. "You can't do this," Patricia screamed. "This is our home. You gave it to us. You can't just take it back." "I'm not taking anything back," I said, my voice still calm despite my racing heart. "I co-signed for a mortgage. I've been making payments. And as of today, after receiving a text message from my husband," I looked directly at Derek, uninviting me from a celebration in a home I'm paying for. I've decided I no longer want to be financially tied to this property. Derek finally found his voice. Amber, please, let's talk about this privately. There's more, I interrupted. I pulled out another set of papers. I've also contacted an attorney about our marital assets. Since we live in a community property state, I had her review everything. And since I've been the primary financial contributor to our marriage, and since most of our major assets are in my name alone, I'm filing for legal separation. You'll receive the official paperwork tomorrow morning. The explosion that followed was like nothing I had ever experienced. Patricia was crying and screaming at the same time. Vanessa was threatening to sue me, to ruin me, to make sure everyone knew what a terrible person I was. Joel was trying to calm everyone down, but nobody was listening, and Derek just stood there, frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I gathered my papers calmly, putting them back in my folder. I turned toward the door, ready to leave them all behind. But then I stopped and looked back at Derek one more time. Oh, and Derek, I said. I had the locks changed at our house. Well, my house actually, since it's titled in my name only. I bought it 2 years before we got married, remember? Your belongings will be packed and ready for pickup tomorrow evening. You can stay here with your mother, in the mansion I'm no longer paying for. Then I walked out of that study, down the hallway, past all those party guests who had stopped talking and were now staring at me with wide eyes. They must have heard the yelling. I didn't care. I held my head high, walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove away. My hands didn't start shaking until I was 3 blocks away. Then I had to pull over because I couldn't see the road through my tears. But they weren't sad tears. They were relief tears. Freedom tears. I sat there in my car crying and laughing at the same time, probably looking like a crazy person to anyone who drove past. I had done it. I had actually done it. The next few days were strange. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Derek called 27 times the first day alone. Patricia called, Vanessa called, even some of Patricia's friends called to tell me what a horrible person I was. I blocked most of the numbers. The ones I didn't block, I just ignored. I took 2 days off work, something I never did. I met with Linda, my attorney, and we went through everything in detail. She was impressed with how much documentation I had gathered. You've made this very easy, she told me. Most people don't think clearly when they're emotional. But you did. I also met with a financial advisor to make sure I understood exactly where I stood. The news was better than I expected. My business was doing well. My personal savings, while depleted from the house down payment, would recover. And since Derek's name wasn't on most of our assets, the separation would be financially cleaner than it could have been. I even started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Chen, and she was kind and straightforward. You've been conditioned to accept poor treatment, she told me in our first session. You equated love with financial support. That's not love, that's a transaction. Her words hit hard, but they were true. On the 3rd day after the party, something happened that changed everything again. I came home from a therapy session to find an envelope taped to my front door. Just a plain white envelope with my name written on it in shaky handwriting I recognized as Joel's. Inside was a letter and a stack of printed papers. I sat down on my couch and started reading. Dear Amber, the letter began. I should have told you this years ago, but I was a coward. I let Patricia control everything, including how we treated you. I watched her be cold to you, and I said nothing. I watched Vanessa take advantage of you, and I said nothing. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. But after what happened at the party, after watching you walk out with your head held high while we all screamed at you like animals, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. You deserve to know the truth, all of it. My heart started pounding. I set the letter down and looked at the papers. They were printouts of text messages. Lots of text messages, between Patricia and Derek, between Derek and Vanessa, between all 3 of them, actually. The messages went back 18 months. I read them slowly, carefully, each one making me feel sicker than the last. Patricia to Derek. You need to get control of Amber's money. She's your wife, not your boss. Derek to Patricia. I know, Mum. I'm working on it. Patricia to Derek. Work faster. Get her to buy us a house, then we can start phase 2. Phase 2? I kept reading. Vanessa to Derek. Once Mom has the house, we start working on Amber to fund my business. A real business this time, not that small stuff. Something big. Derek to Vanessa. She's already suspicious about the money you borrowed before. We need to be careful. Vanessa to Derek. That's why the house was genius. Once she's invested that much in the family, she won't be able to say no to smaller requests. She'll be trapped. Trapped. They used that word. Trapped. I kept reading, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. Patricia to Derek. Next step is getting her to add me to your bank accounts. For emergencies, you'll say. Then we have access to everything. Derek to Patricia. I'll talk to her about it after the housewarming party. She'll be feeling good about the family then. But the worst messages were yet to come. These were from about 6 months ago. Patricia to Derek. If you can't control her, then maybe it's time to think about an exit strategy. Document everything. Make it look like she's the problem. Then, when you divorce her, you can claim you deserve half of everything, including her business. I stopped breathing. Actually stopped breathing for a few seconds. Derek's response. How would that even work? The business is in her name. Patricia to Derek. Community property laws. You've been married 7 years. You supported her emotionally while she built the business. You deserve compensation. I've already talked to a lawyer friend about it. It's possible. Derek to Patricia. Let me think about it. I don't want to lose everything if it doesn't work. Patricia to Derek. You won't lose. You'll gain. Trust me. I set the papers down. My whole body felt numb. The man I married, the man I loved and supported and worked myself sick for, had been plotting with his mother to exploit me financially and then throw me away. The house wasn't a gift they accepted graciously. It was part of a plan. A trap. Just like Vanessa said, that text message telling me not to come to the party, it wasn't just rudeness, it was part of a pattern. Isolate me. Make me feel like I didn't belong. Keep me off balance and desperate for approval. Also, I would keep giving them money while they planned to take everything. I picked up Joel's letter again and read the rest. I found these messages on Patricia's iPad last week. She doesn't know I saw them. I've been trying to figure out what to do with them. After the party, after seeing what they did to you, I knew I had to give them to you. I'm sorry, Amber. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. You were nothing but kind and generous to us, and we treated you terribly. Patricia is my wife and Derek is my son, but what they did to you is wrong. You needed to know the truth. I hope these help you in whatever legal matters are coming. You deserve better than all of us. I'm ashamed of my family, and I'm ashamed of myself. Joel. I sat there for a long time holding those papers. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to cry. But mostly I felt validated. Everything I had suspected, every feeling I had pushed down and told myself was unfair or paranoid, it was all real. It was all true. They had been using me, planning to use me more. And if I hadn't received that text message, if I hadn't finally stood up for myself, they would have succeeded. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me pick up. Hi, is this Amber? A woman's voice asked. Young, nervous. Yes, I said carefully. My name is Claire. I'm Derek's girlfriend. I was. I think we need to talk. I met Claire the next morning at a coffee shop across town, somewhere I knew Derek would never go. She was younger than me, maybe 28 or 29, with long dark hair and nervous eyes. She was pretty in a simple way, wearing jeans and a sweater, twisting a napkin in her hands as I sat down across from her. Thank you for meeting me, she said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I admitted. But I'm curious why Derek's girlfriend wants to talk to me. She flinched at the word girlfriend. I didn't know, she said quickly. I swear I didn't know he was married. He told me he was divorced. He said his ex-wife was making his life difficult, fighting him over money in the house. He made it sound like you were... I'm sorry, I feel so stupid. I studied her face. She looked genuinely upset, genuinely sorry. I realized I wasn't angry at her. How could I be? She was another person Derek had lied to. How did you find out? I asked. Vanessa's social media posts, Claire said. After your confrontation at the party, she posted all this stuff about a cruel ex-wife who was trying to steal her parents' house. But she used your full name. I looked you up and saw wedding photos, recent wedding photos. Derek and I have been seeing each other for 4 months, and you two got married 7 years ago. The math didn't work. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I confronted him. He tried to lie at first, said those were old photos, that you were technically still married but separated. But I kept pushing, and he finally admitted the truth. So I ended it. And then I thought you should know. Because if he lied to me, he's probably lying to you too. He is, I said. But I already knew about the lying, just not about you. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. I would never... If I had known he was married, I never would have gone out with him. My parents are divorced because my dad cheated on my mom. I saw what that did to her. I would never want to be the other woman. You're not the other woman, I told her. You're another victim of Derek's lies. She wiped her eyes and looked at her phone. I have screenshots of our conversations. Some of them are pretty bad. He said a lot of things about you that I now realize were lies. But maybe they could help you. In the divorce? She turned her phone toward me. I started reading the messages between her and Derek, and with each one, my disgust grew deeper. Derek to Claire. My ex-wife thinks she owns me because she makes more money. She controls everything. Derek to Claire. I can't wait until this is all settled and I can finally be free. Free to be with someone who actually respects me. Derek to Claire. She's making the divorce as difficult as possible, taking everything even though she doesn't need it. Some people are just greedy. All of this while he was living in my house, eating food I paid for, driving a car I helped buy. All of this while he was plotting with his mother to take my business, my money, my everything. But the worst message was one from just a week ago. Derek to Claire. Once I get through this divorce, I'll finally have some money. My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything she built during the marriage. It's community property. I supported her emotionally while she worked, so I deserve compensation. We could take a trip somewhere nice once it's all settled. Anywhere you want to go. He was already planning how to spend my money with another woman. Money he hadn't earned. Money from a business he had nothing to do with building. And he was calling it getting through this divorce like I was the one who had forced this situation, when his own mother's text messages showed they had been planning to divorce me for months. Can you send me these screenshots? I asked Claire. She nodded and asked for my number. Within seconds, my phone was buzzing with incoming messages, evidence, proof, documentation of Derek's lies, his manipulation, his plans. Why are you helping me? I asked her. You don't even know me. Claire looked down at her hands. Because it's the right thing to do, and because I saw his face when I confronted him with the truth. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't ashamed. He was just angry that he got caught. That's when I knew he didn't actually care about me. I was just useful to him. Like you were. Like everyone is to him. She was right. That was exactly what we were to Derek and his family. Useful. Tools to be used and discarded when we were no longer needed. We talked for another hour. Claire told me about Derek's lies, the ways he had manipulated her, the excuses he made for why he couldn't introduce her to his family yet. It was sad how similar our stories were, just from different angles. When we finally said goodbye, Claire hugged me. I hope you take everything from him, she whispered. He deserves it. I went straight to Linda's office with the new evidence. She looked through Claire's screenshots and Joel's text message printouts with growing excitement. This is excellent, she said. Evidence of infidelity, evidence of planned financial exploitation, evidence of intentional manipulation. Amber, his case just fell apart. Derek tried to fight the divorce at first. He claimed he deserved half of my business because he had supported me emotionally during our marriage. His lawyer argued that he had sacrificed his own career advancement to be there for me. It was ridiculous, but they tried. Then Linda presented all the evidence. The text messages showing Derek and Patricia planning to exploit me. The screenshots from Claire showing Derek's infidelity and his plans to spend divorce money on vacations with his girlfriend. The timeline showing how Derek had been lying to multiple people for months. Derek's lawyer looked at the evidence and advised him to settle. The case was unwinnable. Derek knew it too. We settled out of court. Derek got a small portion of our shared savings, money that was genuinely earned during our marriage. But he got nothing from my business, nothing from the house, nothing from my retirement accounts. Just enough to start over somewhere else, which was more than he deserved. Patricia had one last outburst. She actually showed up at my office building, screaming in the lobby about how I had destroyed her family, stolen her home, and ruined her son's life. Security removed her while she yelled that I would regret this, that everyone would know what kind of person I really was. But I didn't regret it. Not even for a second. The mansion sold 3 months later. Patricia and Joel couldn't refinance without me, and they certainly couldn't afford to buy me out. The house sold for $865,000. After paying off the mortgage and real estate fees, and returning my down payment plus the mortgage payments I had made, Patricia and Joel walked away with about $15,000 total. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. Vanessa had to move in with a friend because she couldn't afford her own place anymore. Her business plans never materialized without access to my wallet. Joel called me one last time, about a month after everything was settled.